Good morning, everybody. Happy Veterans Day. We're super grateful for all the veterans that made this happen. We're going to start off by the national anthem by choir.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear. To support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. And to bear true faith. And allegiance to the same. That I will obey. The orders of. The President of the United States. And the orders of. Those officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God.
We celebrate Veterans Day on the anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. The armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The timing of this holiday is quite deliberate in terms of historical fact. But somehow it always seems quite fitting to me that this day comes deep in autumn when the colors are muted and the days seem to invite contemplation. It is, in a way, an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise, but most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. In memory of those who gave the last full measure of devotion may our efforts to achieve lasting peace gain strength. Let us make a vow to our dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Strengthened by their courage, heartened by their value, and borne by their memory, let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died.
In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
My name is Lyle Johnson, and my age is 96.
And where are you from?
Well, where do you mean from? I'm from quite a few places.
You can tell me a couple.
Well, I'm originally from Arizona, and then we moved to California, and I lived there for a long time.
What branch have you served in, and for how many years?
I was in the Navy and served 22 months, as I think. I went in at the end of the month, and the year the war was ending and winding down, and they was releasing the people, and I just had to wait my turn, so we just went a lot of places.
Okay, and then do you want to tell me a little bit about your service?
Well, when I got out of the service, they had an organization set up along the coast of California where it was an island out by Santa Catalina called Santa Barbara, and they had a house built up there they would house about 12 people, and our job was to climb up this big tower they'd built there, and we could see all around an ocean, and we were supposed to anything we saw on the ocean, it was boats or anything we saw, we had to put it in code and send it down to San Diego, and they would analyze it and see if they were afraid the Japanese were going to have one last stand and come in shore and then bomb the cities along the shore. So they were pretty cautious, and that's what our job was.
Gotcha. Why did you decide to serve?
Well, I was drafted. They decided for me.
Good choice. Okay, and I'll ask you two more questions. What does freedom mean to you?
That's hard to say, because without freedom, we wouldn't be much. It meant a lot to me. I was willing to give my life for it, and so I think quite a bit of freedom. I think it's a wonderful country.
My name is Doug Holliday. My hometown is Holliday, Utah. My great-great-grandfather settled Holliday, Utah.
No
How about
way.
that? It's always told people it was named after me, but they kind of roll their eyes and say, sure it was. Okay,
Somewhat.
I am almost 80 years old. And I went to the University of Utah. And the year I started there, I decided, well, the Vietnam War was on, and it was a very unpopular war. And I thought, if I'm going to go into battle and die, I want to choose where I want to be. So I joined the Navy. And after I went to the university for a year, I was called on a mission to Germany for 2.5 years. My plan was to join the Navy and become a naval officer. But that didn't quite work out because by the time I came home 2.5 years later, the war was pretty feverishly then. And they said, Mr. Holliday, you've already had 3 deferments. There's others that are deserving to be deferred from the war. We need you to come in and fulfill your enlistment. So I did. And I think 2 things saved my life. 1, becoming an Eagle Scout. And 2nd, my commanding officer suggested that I be nominated for a security clearance. And so a few days later, I had neighbors coming to my door. What have you done, Doug? I've had the FBI at my door, and the Office of Naval Intelligence have been asking a lot of questions about you. I said, don't worry, I haven't done anything bad. They're just trying to do a background investigation to make sure that I'm worthy of a clearance. So I ended up with a top secret clearance, served in the Navy for 2 years, and I got assigned to San Diego. And my assignment was at a top secret location. I couldn't even wear my uniform to work. I had to go to work and then change into my uniform. But I was responsible for codes that they use for transmission communication things and all of the equipment. And during that 2 years that I served active duty, the USS Pueblo was captured by the North Koreans. And we thought to ourselves, boy, it looks like our codes have all been compromised. They have access to not only our equipment, but also those codes. So we had to work feverishly to get new codes to the Pacific Fleet because we couldn't use the existing codes any longer. So that's a little bit of the background. I was released from the Navy. I finished my schooling at the University of Utah, got a degree in accounting, and the Navy came calling again. Hey, we'd like to offer you a commission. I said, well, you only got one bite at the apple and you took it. And now I have other things in mind for myself. So that's kind of the background and how the Navy fit in. My enlistment started in 1961 through 1976. So I had a reserve status for 15 years. But I didn't make it a career. I was only on active duty for 2 years. And then getting an accounting degree, I went into public accounting. And I went to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers. And then a whole lot of other things happened in my life. But I love this country. I enjoyed being a salty sailor, and it was a treat. I was very blessed to have that experience and not be put in harm's way. I had a couple of good friends that were killed in the Vietnam War, but they chose to just wait and get drafted, and they ended up right on the front lines in the Army, and they were shot and killed. Sad, but it was they served their country and they served it well. Okay, what kind of questions do you have now?
You basically got everything.
Did I cover it all for you?
I'll give you a couple though. What was your most positive experience?
Most positive experience in the Navy?
Yeah.
Well, it was really gratifying to receive that clearance because not too many people end up with a top secret clearance. And it meant that I could handle all kinds of documents. Not that I needed to know, but they had to pass over my desk, and that was fun. That was nice to think, gosh, I guess being an Eagle Scout really paid off, because that was one of the things that the interviewer said. The fact that you were an Eagle Scout and had accomplished that showed that you were trustworthy, and so I think that's why they gave me the clearance.
Gotcha. What does freedom mean to you?
Well, freedom has a lot of responsibility associated with it. And we have lived in such a great country, the best country in all the world. And it offers us the freedoms that so many countries don't have. But it means the opportunity to exercise my free will and choose the occupation that I wanted to go into, how I wanted to serve my country. I sometimes think that military service should be mandatory in our country, much like it is in some of the other countries, like in Taiwan, all the young people are expected to serve their military for like 6 months. I think it's in Israel, it might be a 2 or 3 year commitment. But the thing that's good is it helps them learn some skills associated with what it means to serve their country.
Gotcha. Do you have anything else for us that you'd like to say?
Well, I love Corner Canyon.
We appreciate it.
It's a great high school.
Okay, my name is Bob Lemon. This is my wife, Marilyn. We are both from California. We were born in Southern California. My hometown is really hard to tell you because my father was in the Navy, so I lived in a bunch of other places, but I was born in Coronado, California, and I was very lucky, and I went back to Coronado, and I graduated from Coronado High School in 1972, the same year, the same school my mother had graduated in, whose father was also in the Navy, in 1942, so 30 years later, so it's kind of cool. And Marilyn's from Selmar, right?
Selmar, California. Yep.
And we met in the middle of both of our careers. Marilyn worked for the Air Force as a contracting officer, and in 1990 we met, and I was working for her, and then we got married in 1994, and she and I continue to travel together in multiple locations.
That's awesome. Okay, what branch have you served in and how many years?
So I was in the Air Force for 27 years, and as I said, I started in the Air. I was commissioned in 1979, and I retired in 2005. Long time.
For sure. Just tell us a little bit about your guys' service or your service.
So I graduated from BYU and went through the ROTC program there. Went to navigator training in California, and when I graduated from navigator training, I qualified and was assigned to the fighter track. So I went to Homestead, Florida, and where I was trained to fly the F-4 as a backseater in the F-4. I flew that for 10 years. I have just shy of 1,600 hours in the F-4. I flew in, I was on a combat units in North Carolina, in California at George Air Force Base, and in the Philippines at Clark Air Base. And then I went on a staff tour for a couple of years, and then changed airplanes and went to the F-15E, which is a two-seat airplane, and was trained at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. And then we got married at the end of that, and then I went to spend our honeymoon at RAF Lakenheath in England, where we spent 5.5 years. And it was a long, much longer tour than it was supposed to be, because I got selected as an operations officer, which is the number 2 guy in a fighter squadron, and then as a squadron commander, and so we had a really great time. And so I had multiple deployments in both of those, in all of those locations that I served in, and I ended up with about 1,100 hours in the F-15. So that's not a lot of hours if you're a heavy guy, but in an F-4, the normal flight is about 50 minutes. So that's a lot of flights. So I have more flights in the F-4 than I have hours in the F-4. So
that's crazy.
no problem. Yeah.
Okay. Why did you decide to serve?
For me, I think the biggest reason why was I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I knew graduation was coming, and I had been in a military family, and so it was a pretty easy decision. I knew I wanted to go into aviation, and once I got in and started flying the F-4, I was like, it fit like a glove. It was just so much. I really enjoyed it. It was dangerous, and there's opportunities to do some things that weren't necessarily life extending, but I guess I lived through it because here I am. But one thing you asked me I didn't tell you was that I'm 68 years old now, and so it didn't kill me.
Yeah, you made it this
so
far.
It must be okay. We used to say you can sleep when you're dead, so it was that much fun, and no one had a problem getting up in the morning and going to work. So
yeah, positive attitude. Jeez. Okay, what does freedom mean to you?
Well, that's a pretty big question, and it's really not what freedom means to me. It's what freedom means to all of us as citizens of a country. And so I clearly, my father served in during World War II. As a 19-year-old, was pulled into the Navy as a young ensign. He was on December 7th. He was not in Pearl Harbor. He was with a carrier group that was delivering airplanes to Wake, and but he came in on the 8th. So I was raised in a family that had a long history of service to our country. So so freedom to me meant taking the opportunity to serve my country. My original plan was spend 4 years, which was my original commitment. But I enjoyed it. I got to go see. I spent 3 years in the Philippines and 5.5 years in England and all over Europe and the middle and the Far East, and so it really worked out great for me. But I've seen people that are not free, and I've seen people that have oppressed other people and have been in conflicts where we have strived to end that type of oppression, the genocide that goes on. So for me, it's a very, very important aspect that we as citizens of the United States are willing to give of our time to promote the betterment of other people. So I think that's kind of my feeling.
Okay, and then do you have anything else you'd like to tell us?
I think the one thing that I would add to what I just said is that we all need to realize, all of us, no matter what our age is, whether that's 14, 15 as freshmen in high school to, you're going to probably have some guys in here that are in their late 80s. We all need to respect the feelings of other people. And the way we do that is to get outside of who we are and willingly give of ourselves. And there's lots of ways to do that, right? You don't have to go into the military. You can do that through service to your community. You can do that through just by being a good neighbor to other people. You do that by accepting those who are different than you and trying to learn from the values that they bring to your life. So that's kind of what I'd like to say. And don't be afraid of things, right? Don't be afraid of the things that are out there. There have been times when I've been in situations I wasn't sure I was going to get through. I'm a 9/11 survivor. I was at the Pentagon on 9/11, and the impact of that on me, for my family. I flew combat missions from my home base in England, and over Serbia in the late 90s, and I would get up in the morning and leave, and my wife wouldn't know if I was coming back. So don't be afraid of the world that we live in. Embrace it and try to put your positive mark on it.
We're going to start off with, what is your name, age, and hometown?
Hal Edwards, 77, Milford, Utah.
All right. And what branch did you serve in, and for how many years?
U.S. Army, 2 years.
Where did you serve, and was it active duty?
It was active duty. I was drafted. This is during the Vietnam War. At that time, if you were from a small town, and you automatically were drafted if you didn't enlist and you didn't have a medical ailment that would keep you out. So I had a deferment while I was on my mission. I had a deferment to go to college, but I knew as soon as I graduated from college, I had to go in. And so after I graduated from college, I worked for 2 weeks for a CPA firm in LA. Then I went active duty, Fort Ord, California. And I was there for basic training and advanced training, and then I worked in finance, the finance office there. Then I went to Germany, and I was, most of the time then I was in Germany. Of course, Vietnam was the big thing then, but a lot of people don't realize this is still when the Berlin Wall existed. And so we had a lot of troops in Germany, and it was actually a tense time because the East Germans outnumbered the U.S. about 6-1.
What was your most positive experience serving?
I mean, overall, it's a positive experience. I don't regret going. It certainly hurt me financially because the pay was so low.
Mm-hmm.
When I went in, my monthly pay was $91.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Holy cow.
that's gross. And so it wasn't really very much money. I think, by the time I got out, it was quite a bit higher, but still not very much.
Mm-hmm.
So financially, it wasn't very much, but I didn't regret it.
What does freedom mean to you?
I think freedom means the right to do what you want as long as it doesn't interfere with others. And of course, the common saying, it isn't free. We have to earn the right to have the freedom.
Mm-hmm. All right. Is there anything else you want to say?
Probably not. It's just that overall it was a good experience. I mean, I got married on my way to Germany, and my wife finished teaching school and then joined me over there, and our oldest son was born there. And we met a lot of great people. It was a good experience. We actually, once my wife got there, we lived in what they call the economy, so we lived really with the Germans. Lived in a house that was owned by Germans, and I could walk every day. It's interesting that the military complexes that we used were all owned by the German government, and they were used by the Germans in World War II. But interesting place, enjoyed it. We lived right on the edge of a very thick forest. It was a good experience.
Name is Patrick Dean, age is 64, and my hometown is, I guess, Ogden, Utah.
What branch did you serve in, and for how many years?
Served in the United States Air Force for 4 years, from 1980 to 1984.
All right. Just tell us about your service. What did you do? Where did you go?
First went to Lackland Air Force Base down in San Antonio, Texas for basic training.
Mm-hmm.
After basic training, I was stationed at Lowry Air Force Base just outside of Denver, Colorado, for tech school. Went to tech school for, I think, 18 to 20 weeks, and then my first duty assignment was Okinawa, Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Okinawa, Japan. I was the only airman that was there that had a top secret clearance, and was single. So I got all the TDY missions. I got to go visit all the different places throughout the Pacific. I got to go to Korea, several different bases in Korea, and not only go there, but also stay there for 3 months at a time while I was there for doing mid-tours for folks. So I got to experience the culture and have a good experience. That, the Philippines, got to take side trips to Thailand and over to Hong Kong. So I got to see a lot of the Pacific while I was in the military for the first couple of years. After I was done with there, my first duty assignment coming back to the United States was to Bowling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. And I was special duty assignment to the OSI headquarters, which is the Office of Special Investigation, coming back. I was there for 6 months, and then re-shipped out, or got orders to go to Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma. So that's where I finished my tour. I worked as a base graphics designer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was...
So what did you do with that?
What we did is we took, say, slides that you had. Back in that day, not too many computers were being used. This is at the very beginning. So you did a lot of hand artwork and a lot of work where you made view graph slides that would be presented. You've seen the old overhead projections screens. So they used to use slides. You'd put those slides on there. So the slide would go and that was part of their presentation. We also did that, or the old 35 millimeter slides that they would use in the round circular carriage. So you would do briefings for different organizations. So, and you did everything from making license plate covers for generals that were visiting or visiting dignitaries to your base, to making name tags. So it was a very varied interest. You know,
That's cool.
some of the fun stuff I got to do was when I was in Japan. Everybody that's in the military has what they call a war skills AFC, which is, if war was to break out, this is what you're going to do. So my war skills was a gun camera film processor. So we would take all the F-15 gun camera film, we'd process it all, meaning we'd take it from where it's regular cartridge film, process it all and turn it into a movie. So we got to see a lot of those dogfights and aerial combats. What you saw in Maverick is
Top
what
Gun?
in Top Gun. That's what we were producing out of the thing. So that was the real fun part. And we had to go through an exercise where we'd take this whole. This is a mobile unit, a mobile processing unit. So we could take it, put it on a big C-5A transport plane, move it up to Korea, set it up, reestablish it, make it go out. So that was the fun part of it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you get to experience a lot of different things while you're in there. So
Yeah.
for me, it was a godsend. Okay,
For sure.
because it took me from growing up in Utah and having this to where I got to go out and see the world and experience it. So
All right. What does freedom mean to you?
what does what?
Freedom mean to you?
I hear it every time I see a jet or a fighter plane or a helicopter go overhead. That to me is the sound of freedom. Freedom is the ability to share your thoughts, share your ideas, be a voice in the community, experience share your experiences, and also bring up new members of our society and new families, grandkids, kids, grandkids, everything else like that. So, and I get my success from that. And freedom is being able to do that. Having lived in a country where martial law has been in place, first time I got to Korea, martial law was in place, meaning if you weren't on base or in your house at 12 o'clock when the siren went off, then you were exposed or able to receive corporal punishment or non-judicial punishment if you weren't that. They could arrest you and take you in and do whatever they wanted. So living in a country that's a third world country or close to that at the time, it's a lot different than living in America. A lot of the people take their freedoms for granted here, having never experienced them outside, where you are the visitor, not the majority, you are the minority. So you always have to be grateful for what you have here, but you can't be as grateful unless you've experienced it from the other side. It gives you a different perspective.
I'm Theron Anderson. I'm 71 years old and I was born and raised in Salt Lake City. Currently live in South Jordan.
All right. And what branch did you serve in?
United States Air Force.
And for how long?
5 years, 1973 to 78.
All right. Why did you decide to serve?
Well, I was almost drafted. 4 days after we got married, I had to go in for pre-induction physical, and then 2 weeks after that, the President of the United States canceled the draft. And 8 months after that, I decided to join the United States Air Force. Wanted a lot of the benefits of the Air Force. I wanted to have the medical benefits to help pay for having a family, children. And I wanted the educational benefits, because going to school was, even though it was way less expensive than today, it was still a burden, because we made a lot less money too.
What experience shaped you most into the person you are today?
Well, I don't know. I think everything you do in life shapes you into who you are. You know, I served a mission for my church. I served in the military. Learned a lot of skills in the military that I've used my whole life. Any service I've done to help other people has shaped me. You know, people I've worked for. So I think you turn into who you are slowly, evolving from all the good things that hopefully you do in life.
Mm-hmm. What does freedom mean to you?
Well, I love this country. I love what our forefathers did to start the United States of America. The freedoms that we have, I believe, are God-given. I believe that nothing just happened by chance. You know, there's not another country in the world like our country. There's not another country in the world that has a government like ours. No country has ever had a constitution that's lasted as long as ours has. Freedom means the right to be part of that and to raise our families and choose what we're going to do and be free to travel most places you want to in the world and pursue your dreams, be it education or family or work or whatever you want. You know, we have the freedom of those things to do that, and I believe that our military helps support that, has for over 200 years and continues to do so. And so I'm thankful for my opportunity to serve and for all those that currently serve today to protect that freedom.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say?
Pursue your dreams, work hard, do the things that make you happy, make your parents, your family proud of you.
My name is Ken Warnick. I'm 78 years old and grew up in American Fork.
All right, and what branch did you serve in and for how many years?
I served in the Air Force. I began my service in 1968 and actually spent 27 years in the military all total. Yeah.
From what years?
So from 68 to 95.
Tell us about your service.
Very briefly, following the end of World War II, there was a joint agreement between the Soviet Union, the British, the French, and the United States to occupy Germany and, in fact, occupy Berlin. Berlin was made into, separated into the four pieces along with Germany. My assignment was my first assignment out of when I left BYU was at Tempelhof Air Force Base in Berlin as part of the 7350th Support Group, and we were part of the occupation forces of Berlin. So what that means is we were there to make a presence in Berlin and to, along with the other allies, particularly the British and the French, as really a counter to the Soviet Union. Berlin, following World War II, there was first of all a blockade of Berlin because the Soviet Union was concerned that the Allies were making too much of a presence. They wanted one currency, and that blockade was actually broken by flying in goods from Western Germany. One of the men that made that famous was Colonel Gale Halverson, known as the Candy Bomber, and from here in Utah, and I suspect most of the young people might have heard of him. But then in 1961, the East Germans, under the direction of the Soviet Union, put up a wall around Berlin, and that was to prevent the East German people migrating into West Berlin, because West Berlin was showing a lot of advancements, great economy, and lots of freedom. That wall eventually came down in 1989. So my job, along with the others, there was Army, there was Air Force, there were Navy, was to show a presence in Berlin of the Allied forces.
All right, what does freedom mean to you?
On a Sunday afternoon, sometimes you like to take a drive with your family. And while we were serving in Berlin, that was not unusual for us, Sunday Eve or some other day. we would get in our vehicle and we would drive about 15 or 20 minutes and we'd run into a wall or a fence or something that prevented us from going any further. So we'd turn around and take another direction and we would eventually run into another wall. So the people of Berlin were basically held hostage in Berlin. We learned then the importance and the value of being free, and I don't think we've ever forgotten that lesson. We were able to, on an occasion, because we were Allied forces, because I wore the Armed Forces uniform, the Air Force uniform, we were able to leave Berlin on occasion. And on those occasions, we just cherished the time that we were not necessarily hostages. So freedom is extremely important to me.
All right. What is your name, age, and hometown?
Darren Sipes, 55, and where I was born, or where I'm at right now? Draper.
Where you grew up?
Where I grew up, South Jordan.
South Jordan. All right. What branch do you or have you served in, and how many years?
I was in the Army for 8 years, 1985 to 1993.
What was your most positive experience serving?
Probably basic training, actually.
Oh, really?
Yes. I went into the military when I was 17 years old, and that really helped me mature quickly and helped me know what, you just kind of go out of high school right into something like that, and it kind of forces you to to grow up quickly.
Tell us about your service. So where you went, what'd you do?
That's kind of boring. Basic training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then I went from there to AIT, which is the training you do for your job in the military, and that was at Fort Devens in Massachusetts. And then after that I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, spent about the next 2 years there, and then on from there to Oahu, Hawaii, Schofield Barracks in Hawaii.
What does freedom mean to you?
Well, I think that's the reason why most of us join the military, right? There's the benefits and stuff, but freedom is, there's plenty of people that went ahead of us that fought and died for our freedom, and so it's a way of giving back and a way of just giving back to society as well. It's we wouldn't have any of this today if we didn't have our freedom, and it seems at times these days some of it is being quietly taken away from us. So when you see that after having felt that before, knowing what the world has to offer you and what this great nation has to offer you, knowing that we can go out and we have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that provide us all these great things we can do, all these great freedoms we have, and to fight to protect and keep that, not just for ourselves but for everyone else. It means a great deal.
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all our veterans. Have a great Veterans Day.